Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I'm Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Thursday. Thank you for joining me. Boy, do we have a great show planned for you today. Eric Metaxas, national radio host, prolific author. He's in studio with me today. We're going to have a dynamic conversation that's going to bring World War II and what was going on in Germany and connect it, according to Eric, to what's going on right now in America and across the globe today. Looking forward to that conversation. Eric has written a book, A Letter to the Christian Church.
Letter to the American Church.
A Letter to the American Church. He's more known for Bonhoeffer. And that's a story about one of the heroes.
That's the biggest book I ever wrote, 600-page book about the German pastor who, because of his faith in Jesus, spoke up for the Jews and against the Nazis. He was murdered by the Nazis at the end of the war. One of the great heroes of the 20th century.
So we'll do that. Joel Gilbert, you guys remember Joel. He's been on the show before. Joel's done the documentary on Michelle Obama, came on the show to talk about that. He's going to come on and help me talk about the Democratic National Convention and all the religious worship of the Obamas and black skin color and racial idolatry, a topic that I'd like to talk about. Shemeka Michelle is going to come on with me as well, and we'll analyze the Obamas and the whole DNC and all the abortion worship, the whole thing. It's a whole religious movement the Democrats got going on in Chicago. Wish I wasn't, well, I'm not there, so I'm glad about it. Anyway, today's show is brought to you by our great friends at First Cup Coffee, a Christian-owned patriot coffee company that stands for core values, family, and building community across the nation. First Cup's freshly roasted beans are delivered in ground or whole bean pods and bulk. Go to firstcup.com and use the code FEARLESS and save an additional 10% on your order. If you subscribe, you can save another 10% for the life of your subscription. Eric, let's get into it. Tell us a little bit about your latest book, The Letter.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned the book, the Bonhoeffer book. That book put me on the map, sold 1 million copies. It's an amazing story. Translated to 20 different languages. There's a film coming out on Bonhoeffer in November, distributed by Angel Studios. It's one of the great stories of the 20th century. But if people say to me today, what's it about? Now, what I say is that what it's about is a man trying to tell the church, this is in Germany in the early 30s, trying to tell the church, it is your job to speak against the evil that is rising around us. That's what Bonhoeffer tried to do. He was a pastor, tried to wake up the church, wake up other pastors and say, church, this is your job. You've got to speak up for the Jews, speak up against the evils, because not just obviously about the Jews, the evil of the Nazis was comprehensive. And the church in his time basically said, no, thank you. We're just going to do church. We don't want to get political. They quoted Romans 13. Oh, we're supposed to do whatever the government says we're supposed to do. Most of the church in Germany said, we're going to take a pass. We're going to see which way the wind blows. We don't want any trouble. We just want to do church. And we all know what happened. The door was opened to satanic evil because of the silence and the inaction of the Christian church in Germany. Now, to be fair, it wasn't all the Christians. And even those who said nothing, many of them were good people who misunderstood what the Bible tells us is our duty. So I wrote that book. And then the last number of years, I have seen exactly what happened then has happened to the American church, which is why I wrote Letter to the American Church. We made a film. People can see the film, lettertotheamericanchurch.com. But it's exactly the same thing. You have a lot of pastors and Christian leaders foolishly, unbiblically saying, oh, we don't do politics. We don't want to go there. And I'm thinking, okay, if slavery was on the ballot, it's 1850. You're going to tell me that you're not going to take a stand against that or against candidates that are pro-slavery? You can't say that from the pulpit? Clearly, that's insanity. But a lot of people, I wrote a book on William Wilberforce, who abolished the slave trade in the British Empire. They act like, oh, if I'd been alive then, I would have spoken against the slave trade as a Christian. If I was alive in Bonhoeffer's time, I would have spoken against the Nazis. But today, it's the same thing that happened with the church in Bonhoeffer's day. Christians are buying this lie that they can avoid politics. And what I say in Letter to the American Church is that that's not biblical. And the historical examples you see from what happened in Germany, it couldn't get more sick than, 12 million people being systematically murdered by the Nazis. And again, that's just that piece of it. The evil of the Nazis, it was satanic evil, and the church simply refused to do what God called it to do. And so the case I make in Letter to the American Church, and anywhere I'm going, churches that I'm speaking at, is that this is happening so exactly, the parallels in America today. We have evil rising around us. You can look in any direction. I mean, whether it's the transgender lunacy, Marxist madness, everywhere you look, it's real evil. And many leading Christian figures are taking a pass. And my message is, God is a judge. You don't get to take a pass. You either will choose to fight evil and stand with God for his purposes. We're commanded to love our neighbors. If you do nothing and you pretend both sides are equal or I can't get into this, when evil comes, and it is coming, you'll be guilty, just as the German Christians who said, this is not my fight, we just want to do church. We blame them because we know, at least I know, if you know the Bonhoeffer story, if the church had stood up, they could have stood against the Nazis. That's what most people don't talk about, is that there was no doubt the church had cultural power in the 30s. And if they had really stood, there's no way the Nazis would have been able to gain the power that they gained and eventually crush the church and do whatever they wanted.
Who are the Nazis now?
Well, again, when we say the Nazis, we're saying who are the people promoting evil? Who are people promoting an anti-God agenda? To me, in a nutshell, it's the radical left. In other words, if you are saying like, well, you know what? We don't need a southern border. You've opened the door to child rape, to child sex trafficking, to some of the most wicked. I mean, if anybody saw it, if you were in a room where this stuff is going on, you'd know this is evil. This is not bad. This is not something I disagree with. This is evil. Child rape, sex trafficking. Now, that's one example. The Democrats have completely opened the border. And again, it's cynicism because they're doing it for all kinds of reasons. But the point is, the results are that fentanyl pouring in, destroying families throughout the heartland. They clearly don't care. They've just opened the door to that. The lunacy of the transgender crazy stuff is, this is destroying families. It's destroying human beings' lives. Body parts are being cut off. They have completely opened the door to that. We saw the authoritarian tendencies of the left under COVID. What happened at J6, putting people in prison for being your political enemies. This is. We've never seen this in America. And that's why I think a lot of people are not responding, because they're thinking like, well, we don't even know what to make of this. But there are people that are waking up and they're saying that this is all evil. This has never happened in America. It's antithetical to who we are as an American nation. It's antithetical to our culture. Most of it has an anti-biblical agenda. So we're seeing this on all these fronts and others that I haven't imagined. So it's all kinds of evil rising up. But the authoritarian quality is what makes it like the Nazis. In other words, they are crushing the opposition, jailing people. I mean, what they did to Steve Bannon, what they did to Peter Navarro, what they were trying to do to Donald Trump, what they've done to friends of mine who happened to be on the Capitol grounds on January 6th, who did absolutely nothing, were made to feel like dirt, like vermin, that they had to take either go to jail or I have a friend, John Strand. It is so evil. And so for us to say, well, you know, it's not my problem, I just want to have a nice life. God is a judge. If you don't stand against this stuff, particularly if you dare to claim to be some kind of Christian, you're guilty in the same way that the German Christians we now know were guilty, because they could have done something and they chose not to.
I have a slightly different take in terms of, I'm not sure if the church is all that silent. I think churches have made decisions.
It depends what we mean when you say the church, right? Because, like, you know, there's the church and then there's the church and then there's the church. A lot of people that claim to be Christians claim to be the church. And I don't, you know, I've come to a point where, I mean, there's this group, Evangelicals for Harris. It's just, it's lunacy.
But and again, that's why I don't think they're silent. So take Raphael Warnock, who I think objectively gave the best speech at the DNC. I don't agree with any of it.
Yeah.
But
Is he really a Christian?
He's a pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church.
I mean,
no, I got it. He's leading a church in Atlanta. And so I'm not sure if the church is silent. I think a lot of churches have chosen sides. They're
but the group you're talking about, folks like him, when I wrote Letter to the American Church, I'm not talking to quote unquote Pastor Warnock any more than I'm talking to Al Sharpton. I don't take them seriously. They are leftist radicals. I don't know that they believe in God, that they care about the Bible. They are basically social activists. I'm talking about the people in the middle who would say, oh no, I'm not like that. I'm against abortion. I'm not like Raphael Warnock. I'm against abortion. But they are saying, I don't need to act on that. I can just be a churchgoer. I don't need to be taking God's values and talking about it. I can just be a sort of neutral. And those are the people that I'm talking about. People like Warnock, to me, they have made their bed with the devil. They've sold their soul for power, and I don't seriously consider them part of the church.
And again, this is where we may be coming at it from different perspectives, because I analyze the black church a lot because that's what I grew up in. That's where most of my experience is in. And I see a lot of them leaning into this. And I see a lot of it, even at the DNC, that there's a religion that has replaced Christianity. That's this racial idolatry and race religion and the worship of women and you know, Kamala Harris and Michelle Obama. And so I can't, it's harder for me to give up on them, even though I agree with you. I think they're preaching heresy. But I also think that there's the other churches, let's call them white or whatever, where there's maybe a sliver of them, I'm not familiar, but maybe there's a sliver of them that are being silent. But it seems like there's a lot or some that are being outspoken on these issues. And so I guess I'm saying there's not this universal silence. I just think there are people that are claiming Christianity that, like you said, have completely abandoned Christianity.
I agree with you. In the Bonhoeffer story, and I write about it in the Letter to the American Church, I show that in the early 30s, there were about 18,000 pastors, Lutheran pastors in Germany, about 18,000. 3,000 of them were total heroes, willing to stand against the Nazis. On the other end of the spectrum, you had 3,000 that were totally in bed with the Nazis, right? So you're always going to have some heroes, and you're going to have some people that are total heretics. What I'm talking about is the 12,000 pastors in the middle. When I look at the evangelical church in America today, I'd say, these are the folks in the middle. They would say, we're not pro-transgender, we're not pro-whatever lunacy you mention, but neither are they standing with the heroes. They're saying, we're going to stay in the middle, we're going to be quiet. In other words, those are the ones that I am speaking to, because I'm saying, like, you know these things are wrong, but what you're getting wrong is you don't think you need to talk about that from the pulpit or stand against that. You don't believe that's your job. And I'm here to tell you that's your job. Your silence is complicity with the maniacs like Warnock and company. You are complicit with them, and the evil agenda that they're happy to push, you are complicit with that agenda. The devil is using you in your silence, in your inaction. Those are the churches that I'm mostly talking about. There is zero doubt that the Marxist maniacs like Warnock, they are always going to be there. But I'm talking about the people that are working with them by saying nothing against them.
What should the church be compelling their congregants to do politically? Because this is my weak point. I'm glad you're sitting down, because you probably want to jump up and slap me. I've never voted.
Consider yourself slapped.
I've never, because I just don't believe there are political solutions to spiritual problems, and I think we have
That's
spiritual
a cliche,
problem.
and because I respect you, I'm going to call you out, Jason. That is an empty cliche. Those are weasel words. Of course, there is not a political solution to it, but to say I'm not going to vote, if they're coming,
I didn't say I'm not going to vote. I said I've never voted.
That you didn't vote, but because the issue is, we have to understand that. My hero, my friend, I worked for Chuck Colson. He always would say, Jesus is not coming back on Air Force One, right? So he's making the point, Politics is not the ultimate answer. You don't make an idol of politics. Okay, guess what? I also don't make an idol of my love of my wife, my love of my family. I don't make an idol. But you don't say, well, I'm not gonna love them. I just want to love Jesus. So when people talk about I'm all about the kingdom, if you really are about the kingdom, you will also be about the world in which you live, because the Lord has not, He didn't get us saved and then we get translated to glory. We are here and we're supposed to live out our faith in this realm, whatever that means. And that means being involved politically, means being involved in my family, it means being involved in everything. You don't look to those things as ultimate solutions. If you do, you're a fool. But to not do those things would be say like, oh, I'm just gonna pray while I let my family rot. No. We clearly know something's out of order if you're doing that. And I think that idea that because politics is not the ultimate solution, it's certainly not the ultimate solution, but if you do not get involved politically, you allow evil to win. People will come in, and this has happened in America. I mean, because we have not been real clear about this, in the culture and in churches, evil has been on the march. We're seeing things now that when we were kids, we could not dream of some of the stuff we're seeing today. It is because Christians have said, well, that's not my job. Of course it's your job. It is absolutely our job. And I think that, if you really think there's no difference between the candidates, I mean, if you just think about, as bad as I now believe George W. Bush was, I believe on balance, he's going to appoint somebody to the Supreme Court who's going to be a constitutionalist. That's actually important. If we didn't have a few of those, we would have already lost the country. So to not be involved, I mean, we have to be clear, as you said, there's no way that you're going to get ultimate answers, the spiritual answers, the stuff in politics. But it doesn't mean that there's not a connection. I wrote a book in 2016 called If You Can Keep It, The Forgotten Promise of American Liberty, where I clearly make the case, which I hadn't really understood myself, to be honest, until that point, of the link that the founders understood when they created the government that we've been blessed to have all this time. They understood the link between virtue and faith and freedom, that you cannot have a free society, you cannot have self-government and liberty unless most people have some kind of virtue and probably have some kind of faith, which leads them to virtue, which leads them to be able to govern themselves. We now live in a world where people have forgotten that, and they kind of think, no, we can have all this wonderful stuff without virtue and faith. The founders knew that if you take faith out and if you take away virtue, if you forget that those things are vital, you lose liberty, and that's where we are in America now.
Is it? I think it's John Adams that says it only works for
that's right.
moral.
But he's one of many right. of them. I quote them in the book. Almost every one of the founders understood that right there.
And so that's my course of action. Because anybody that watches this show, if you just go look at my Twitter feed, my background, I'm a Trump supporter.
Yeah.
I love MAGA people. I like Donald Trump. But I'm someone that feels like if I clean myself up, if I pursue holiness, that's the strongest thing I can do to help clean up a very corrupt and secular culture. And I feel like the politicians are a reflection of just how secular and corrupt the citizenry has become.
That's correct, yeah.
And so I'm trying to clean myself up and trying to change not just my mindset, but try to give people a better understanding of American history, what Christian culture did for America, and trying to educate people on the proper mindset so that those that have a passion for voting are approaching it with the right mindset. It's a quirk of mine. I know I'm making excuses, and I don't mind you beating me up on it, because a lot of people beat me up on the fact that I haven't voted. But I've just had an aversion. I joined student council. I was a very popular kid at my high school, most popular. I was on student council as a kid. And I can remember going, man, this is a joke. And these people are a joke, and ever since then, I've just never liked politics, because it's like people lie and they don't live up to their word. And if someone,
if good people like you and me and a lot of listeners do not get involved, those corrupt people are going to be the ones running things. So if we just sit back and say it's corrupt, we are guilty because we're allowing the corrupt people to run it. We've got to fight against the corruption. And listen, we've had a lot of wonderful people. I told you, I wrote a book called Amazing Grace about William Wilberforce. He was the man in British politics who, through politics, because of his Christian faith, stood against the slave trade and ended the satanic slave trade. An amazing thing. He did it politically. Now, it wasn't just politics, but imagine if he had just said, you know what, it's all dirty, I'm just going to be a pastor someplace. He understood that God had given him a gift, that he was going to live out his faith. And because he lived out his faith, he persuaded others, and they ended the slave trade. It's one of the great stories. I mean, it's amazing. There was a film, Amazing Grace. But he understood that I can be a good force in politics. And he actually led the way that many, many serious Christians got involved in politics because of him in England. And he changed things as a result of that. So it became less corrupt. We have the same situation today. When good people say, well, I don't want to run, we need all those people that have been in prison in J6, they should all run for Congress because they have been radicalized. They have seen what corruption can do. And so I think good people need to get in the game, and you need to get serious. We're going to lose the nation. If we lose this election, it's over. This is the last exit before the toll. We don't get it like, well, we'll see what happens in 2028. It's over. The left is playing to win, and it's no different. Hitler understood, if I could get the church just to mind their own business for another year or two, I will have power to crush the church. If they wake up before I'm able to do that, so I'll just keep them sleeping, keep them lulled into thinking I'm basically pro-God, I believe in God, I believe in morality. He got the church to sit back, and then eventually, boom, he had control. That's where we are. The left in this country, they will come for any pastor that dares to speak out against, the new religion that we're under, the LGBTQ catechism, that you've got to say this, you've got to believe this, you've got to celebrate this. And down the line, if you speak against it, they're coming for you. But maybe they can't come for enough people yet, but if they get enough control, they are coming for people, just as authoritarians have always done. So they want to keep people sleeping until they get that power. The moment they get that power, it is over. And so I'm trying to wake up the church to say, church, we have a moment here. This is a moment. The window is closing. When it's over, it's over. You're not going to get, if Trump is not elected and we don't get serious, in a year from now and 2 years from now, you may want to do something. You will not have the ability to do something.
There's nothing better at the end of a long day than sitting down in your favorite easy chair with a glass of your favorite whiskey. And hey, if it turns out that with every glass, you're helping to support a great American cause, doesn't taste any better than that. It's time to chart your own course with Flying Ace whiskeys from Craft Co. Inspired by generations of American aviators and proudly made right here in the United States, Flying Ace is not only making amazing whiskeys, they're also committed to supporting our brave troops and their families through their partnership with Folds of Honor. They're providing scholarships to families of Americans fallen and disabled, and these scholarships allow families to begin to chart their own new course after experiencing great sacrifice. Flying Ace whiskeys are American proud because they're American made. And they're American proud because they're helping to support our heroes and families. Don't wait around. Today's the day to get your own and see what all the hype is about. Buy online at flyingacesspirits.com and use the promo code America to get free shipping. That's Flying Aces, an S at the end of Ace, then another S, spirits.com. Use the promo code America for free shipping. I certainly, that's consistent with my message. I can remember I came out to TPUSA in Phoenix and was like, my message was like, hey, you white guys, get over your guilt, quit apologizing, defend yourself, quit bowing to the Marxists, the Black Lives Matter crowd, the LGBTQ crowd. Just quit, cut it out, man up. And I know it's not just the responsibility of white guys, it's the responsibility of all of us that believe Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior. But I'm right there with you in terms of being unapologetically Christian. And that's, I want to pivot a little bit and just get your thoughts a little bit because, I respect you and I know you're pretty fearless and you'll talk about anything. But I want to ask you your thoughts on what's going on with Candace Owens?
I have no idea.
This
I couldn't be more baffled, and I'm waiting for somebody to help me understand. I mean, there are several levels. First of all, with everything going on in this country, you know, it's like the house is on fire, and you want to talk about there's some brown patches on the lawn, we need to water the lawn. Like, there's a level of insanity in bringing this stuff up. I don't think I agree with anything she's saying, but even if there were something to it, why in the world is she choosing now to talk about this? It just that alone blows my mind. I'm pro-Israel. I wrote a book about Bonhoeffer, who gave his life speaking out for the Jews of Europe. So I take that very seriously. I think that the Hamas demonstrations, these are people who seem to be fine with Hamas brutally. I mean, we most of us don't even realize what the brutality, the murder, the rape. It is so wicked, it speaks for itself. And the idea that people are like, yeah, whatever, the Palestine's being occupied by the Jews, I'm thinking it's kind of simple to me. So I cannot, for the life of me, it's my long way of saying, for the life of me, cannot fathom why Candace Owens, who has said so many great things, why she would say this stuff, or why she would want to go down this. I thought I turned my phone off, didn't I? Why would she would want to go down this path now? It's just bizarre to me, absolutely bizarre.
I'm going to play devil's advocate or argue her side of it in terms of, take Thomas Massey, that congressman had said that all the politicians are answering to AIPAC, and that there's an incredible Israeli influence over American government.
Right.
And Candace, I think her argument is like, hey, we're at the brink of World War III, and the conflict between Iran and Israel may be at the center of it. And obviously what's going on with Israel and Palestine and Israel and Hamas, that she's talking about it because she's saying that Israel has a lot of influence over American politics. And so I think that's what her argument is. That I don't like the way she's unpacking it. You know, there's a clip of Candace, looks like she's talking on her cell phone in her house. And this is like a really serious issue. And just kind of going, what do they call it? Stream of conscious on your cell phone. That's not how you address this issue. You got to be more serious, more deliberate, more thoughtful than that.
I don't know. I when people talk about Israel having a great influence in American foreign policy, I assume there's a conversation to be had there. But my goodness, Israel stands alone amidst neighbors that want to wipe it out. They are a country that is, more like us than like any of the countries around them. That's an understatement. I mean, the idea that we would want them not to be wiped out, not to have genocide, not to have another. Let's be clear. All of their enemies would tomorrow love to wipe them off of the face of the earth. I think it's kind of a noble, pro-American thing to say we're against that. We would want to stand with our friends in Israel. Doesn't mean they're perfect. It's like saying everybody needs to vote for Donald Trump. He's not perfect, but it strikes me as beside the point. I mean, I'm more exercised over the lunacy of giving billions of dollars to Ukraine so the neocons can make money and we can forward the fiction that our biggest enemy is Russia. It's no longer the Soviet Union. I don't even know why we have NATO at this point. It's just a kind of a strange thing to me. I'd be more interested in that bizarre situation, how we've kind of made an enemy of Russia in a way. Now, I don't think they're good guys. I don't think Putin's a good guy, but it's just, when we're talking foreign policy, that seems to be more confusing and troubling than whether we ought to stand for Israel.
My take, Ukraine and Russia and all this, I'm looking at from Tucker Carlson to Candace to somewhat myself, although I'm not smart enough to fully understand. But there's a movement of people that is like, hey man, we're just tired of war and World War III, some kind of nuclear conflict. And I look across at the left and the Marxists, and when I go down the rabbit hole of what's at the heart of their beliefs, what are they driving towards? And I look at Bill Gates and I look at all these people that think we're overpopulated. And those seem to be the people that want World War III and conflict and nuclear conflict. The people that keep saying we're overpopulated and we got to do things to decrease the population, they just happen to be the same people that want war and want killing babies in the womb and want just death.
That is absolutely correct. Yeah. No, that is absolutely. And listen, this is how you know it is a spiritual issue. It's not a political issue. It's a satanic agenda. Satan hates God and he hates those made in God's image. He hates human beings. And so when you have people who have a fetish for murdering the unborn and reducing the population and killing, euthanizing old people and sick people and handicapped, just as the Nazis did, you see a spiritual threat. It is an anti-God, anti-human threat. That's what we're facing in this country. And that's why if Christians don't recognize this and stand and fight against it in any way, in other words, not just on your knees in prayer, but it better be in prayer, but also anything you can do politically, anything you can do in your communities to advocate, to understand this is an end times Antichrist agenda. This is not just some people have a different point of view. It has risen to the level where now you can see these people hate humanity. They talk about reducing the population from 8 billion to 2 billion. That is, Hitler killed millions of people. You have despots in history who've killed millions of people. Stalin. Most of us know that Mao and Stalin and Hitler, that's a satanic, sick agenda. And we see that now among the globalists that are meeting at Davos. And how extraordinary that Western leftists, Western globalists have the same agenda. It is anti-human. That's telling people something, that this is more than politics.
And I guess, and I'll pivot off of this with my last point. Anything that pulls at the threads and is trying to get to the bottom of why there's a war agenda and a nuclear conflict agenda, I think is a healthy conversation and needs to be had. And we have to be more tolerant of conversations that we don't fully agree with. And particularly for someone like me, who I made my bones in the sports lane and playing catch up on a lot of this political stuff. I was sharing with Jared when you were at the bathroom before we were taping, and I'll expose my lack of knowledge here, or perhaps stupidity. I can remember 4 years ago, I went and spoke, I think for David Horowitz down in Florida, some group he had. And at that time, I was giving a speech about Jesus Christ, and we got to put him into the game, and that's why we're losing the culture war. We got our best player on the sidelines, and I give this analogy about Tom Brady against the Atlanta. Are you a sports fan at all?
Enough to know who Tom Brady might be.
Yeah, down 28-3 at halftime. They win the Super Bowl down 28-3, and so I was like, man, the New England Patriots didn't give up because they got Tom Brady, and I would always end with, we got Jesus Christ. It doesn't matter what the scoreboard is. We just got to put Jesus into the game. I'm giving this speech, and there's a lot of Jewish people in the audience. 4 years ago, I had no idea that Jewish people didn't believe in Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. I'm that uninformed. I did not know, and I got rushed after the speech with people questioning me and upset with me for leaning so much into talking about Jesus. That's how little I knew. And that's why these conversations that I'm talking about are important, because there are people like me that if we limit conversation, you're limiting my ability to learn what I don't know. And so this is where I'm a bit defensive of Candace Owens. I'm not sure her conversation is 100% right.
Well, look, that's why I have not come out and condemned her, because I am frankly confused by what she said and why she said it. I honestly, it doesn't sound right to me, but it's so confusing to me that I just, I don't feel like I need to pile on, but that's kind of where I come out.
What further actions, circling back to the letter to the church, what further actions would you like to see from the church that would change things and impact it? Is it just simply voting for Trump? Is it simple?
Well, that's a start. Patriots bled and died so that we could vote. I have not bled and died. You have not bled and died.
Did they
I have
bleed
not
and
gone
die
to
so
war.
we could vote? You're hitting my pet issue, because I don't think.
Well, yeah,
I think they bled and died for our freedom.
Well, what do you think your freedom is? What do you think?
Not voting.
How do you
My freedom
How do you
is-
keep your freedom if people don't vote for people? I mean, this is our
I'm
system
free
going.
because God said I'm free, not because the government.
That's nonsense.
Not because
that
the
is
government
spiritual
says so.
freedom. No, that is.
That's the only freedom
Jason,
that matters.
Jason,
I'm just a visitor.
that
here.
is not true. That is not true. You are saved because of what Jesus did on the cross, and you are saved. And there's a freedom which is the eternal freedom, which is the ultimate freedom. But to say that the freedom won by patriots on the battlefield that we have is nothing is mistaken.
I didn't say nothing. I think it's everything.
But I'm saying that if you lived in North Korea, you could be a Christian and you could be freed, but you open your mouth and you'll be tortured and killed. If you're in China today and you say, I want to speak about my Christian values, and my Christian values are against the authoritarian system, they will put you in prison or in a prison camp, and they will torture you. My mother grew up in Nazi Germany, which became East Germany under Stalin, okay? When you come from a place where you have none of that kind of freedom, like the kind of freedom that we mostly take for granted in the United States of America, you recognize the value. What would it be like to live in a country where I could speak my mind? Wow. So of course, you're ultimately free. A Christian in the Soviet Union could say what they want, or in China can say what they want. But the point is that nobody's going to say, well, I don't like what you're saying, but you have the right to say it. They're going to crack down on you. They may torture you and kill you. They may torture and kill your family if you live in North Korea. So we have to understand that what we have in this country, the freedoms won by patriots in this country, it's a beautiful thing. And I would say that it comes out of the Christian faith. In other words, I don't think you could have the kind of government we have. In fact, I know this. You could not have the kind of government we have with civil rights, with the freedoms that we have, with the rights that we have as human beings to speak our mind. And that could have never come into being apart from Christian faith. It was the founders were mostly devout Christians, and all these things came out of their
1000%
views.
agree.
So it's a spiritual reality and a theological reality that is played out into history, and a government was created as a result of that. That's a beautiful thing. It's an amazing thing in history, and we're losing it.
A government that, to me, has lost sight of our founding documents.
Yeah.
Don't respect our founding documents, compromise on our founding documents, won't address debt slavery, won't address...
Well, that's a big one.
Yeah, won't address tax slavery.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's like, I just want to be more Christian and try to promote...
So you have
a
given
Christian
up.
world. No, I'm trying to promote...
But you're saying there's no hope.
No, there is hope. If we all would lean into our Christian values, trust me, we'd start getting politicians that protected those things that are in the Constitution, that are in our founding documents, that allow all of this freedom.
What does it mean
enjoy.
when you say to lean into our Christian values? Jimmy Carter is a Christian, okay? But when he was president,
Policies, yeah, not
his
Christian.
policies didn't reflect that. So you can be a Christian, a real Christian, and not live out your faith. George W. Bush, evidently some kind of a serious Christian. Mike Pence, a Christian. But you have to live out your faith. You may still be saved. I mean, I hope that I will see these people in glory. But the point is, God expects us to live out our faith, not just say, I'm going to do my faith thing and God's got the rest. God calls us to live out our faith. He calls us to be heroic in our faith. If you believe, everybody's a Christian says, oh, I believe Jesus defeated death on the cross. Do you? If you do, you will live fearlessly. You will live bravely. You will not be afraid of what they might do. You're going to live boldly, trusting in God but there are a lot of Christians that are hedging their bets. They're acting like they don't believe he really defeated death on the cross. I don't know. I want to be careful. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get thrown in jail. I don't want to lose my 501c3 tax status. I don't want to. That's living in fear. So you can be a Christian and still not live out your faith. And what I've been saying is there are many, many Christians that are being led by Christians who are pushing that kind of attitude. We've got to privatize our faith. We're not meant to privatize our faith. You're supposed to take your faith. If your faith is real, and as you say, you're leaning into it, it's going to bleed out into everything you do. You're going to advocate for real policies that are going to lift up the poor, not fake policies that are going to look like it, but that are going to destroy the poor, which is what the Democrats have been doing. Right, and so we have to get in the game, and we have to be active. And so it's not enough for me. I mean, William Wilberforce had this amazing faith, but he lived it out politically. And so as a result of that, he encouraged others not just to have that faith, but to live their faith out politically. And as a result, it led to the Victorian era where doing good and caring for the poor and all this stuff that we now take for granted came into the culture in the West and over here. So it's got to be both is what I'm trying to say. It's not just like enough for me to live out my faith. That's where you get to this idea of faith is a private thing. It's not a private thing. It's meant to be lived out. I mean, imagine pastors in the mid-19th century who said, you know what, we're not going to take a position on slavery. We're just going to preach the gospel. We're just going to be Christians, and slavery, it's always been here, and we're not going to take a position on that. We today would say, you're a moral pygmy. Human beings are suffering hellish things. They're being owned by other human beings and treated like animals, and you're not going to take a position on that? What kind of a pig are you to not take a position? Do you think God takes a position on that?
Eric, my point, and I'm telling you, I'm more compelled to vote this year than at any time in my life, and it's because Trump is different to me. He's not the typical politician.
Yeah.
And I'm leaning that direction, but it's hard for me because I think abortion is 1,000,000 times worse than slavery. And I see politicians compromising on that issue, and it makes me less enthusiastic.
And therefore, you're not going to vote so that the wicked people can bring abortion in 9 months.
It would almost be like,
beyond.
let's say we were back in, it was 1832, and someone said, you know what, I'm against slavery between these hours. Between noon and 5 p.m., I'm against slavery. The rest of the hours, you can be, that's how they come across to me on this abortion issue.
Yeah.
I'm against abortion during these hours. And I'm like, well, I'm against it 24 hours a day.
But the point is that if you do not do what you can to fight, you're going to make sure that there's more abortion. And that's going to be on you. God's going to judge you for that. And you can say, well, I didn't know. And he's going to say, well, I think you did know.
I get your point. I can't fully disagree with it. And I'm trying to reckon with it. But, reducing the hours that Planned Parenthood is open.
Listen, there's no doubt that I agree with you on this. There's no doubt. I am ultra pro-life. But what I'm trying to say is we have to fight. And the cynicism that creeps in saying, oh, it's all corrupt, and so I'm going to sit it out. You are allowing evil to happen. There are plenty of people that say, well, you know what? I don't have the appetite to fight. I don't want to. God calls us to fight because the unborn need us to fight for them. We have to get in there.
I am a fighter, and I don't want to get defensive about it. I am a fighter. And so beat me up on this.
Well,
beat me up on this.
Good.
Beat me up on this. I guess what I'm saying is just like, I just look over and go, man, them they lukewarm over there.
Yeah.
And these people are satanic. This group is lukewarm.
Right. Well, but you're saying, in a sense, what I'm saying in the book, Letter to the American Church. I'm saying that the lukewarm people are making it possible for evil to win. And so there are plenty rhinos and plenty chinos. I invented the term Christians in name only. They are allowing evil to win because they don't really care that much. But there are people who do care. There are people who are putting their lives on the line. We need to join them and fight for them and try to get some in the middle who don't care to care. If we get a few more, I believe it's possible to win. You understand that in the revolution, I mean, how many people were willing to risk their lives with George Washington? Not that many. Not that many. A lot of people are sitting back saying, let's see how it goes. They didn't give a damn about the people suffering at Valley Forge. They just cared that I don't want to be one of them. Well, God's going to judge those people, okay? But the point is, it's always kind of like that. And so we have a choice. What am I going to do? And to get cynical, there's a real temptation. I get it. To get cynical. And I hear this voice mostly among Christians. People say, you know what? Because of abortion, we're already under judgment. It's over. Jesus is coming back. There's nothing we can do. That is the voice of Satan. There's nothing we can do. Sit down. Don't do anything. In other words, if there was something you could do and you could win, but they're saying, no, don't do anything. Sit down, sit down. I heard this in 2016. People said to me, you got to be out of your mind voting for Donald Trump. And you think maybe by electing Donald Trump, who was a New York liberal 5 minutes ago, and you think by electing this guy, maybe it could affect the Supreme Court and overturn Roe v. Wade? Trust me, Eric, Roe v. Wade will never be overturned. It's the law of the land, and you are smoking crack if you think that by electing this womanizing New York City real estate developer, this billionaire, that's going to affect that. Well, guess what happened? I voted for Donald Trump. He, by the grace of the Lord, got 3 Supreme Court justices. You talk about a miracle. Now imagine, for everybody who didn't vote, like you in 2016, imagine if Hillary Clinton had gotten in there, we would have 3 Supreme Court justices like Sotomayor. That would seal the deal. We never would have overturned Roe v. Wade, which gives us hope for the future. That's not the end of the game because it's back to the states. But the point is that how many voices did I hear, Christian voices, conservative voices saying, don't bother to vote. It's decided, it's over, it's nothing you can do. The same thing happened with Reagan when they said, like, the Soviet Union, that's not going away. The idea that we're going to elect this guy and he's going to stand against the Soviet Union and it's going to come down. Well, guess what? By the grace of God, through Margaret Thatcher, through John Paul II and Ronald Reagan, the Soviet Union crumbled. We saw it in our lifetime. So these things that many cynical people accepted as this is a given, it's never going to change, Roe v. Wade, never going to change, they changed. But you still have people saying, it's over, there's nothing you can do. When people say there's nothing you can do, especially Christians, I say, listen, that's the voice of the devil, because there is something you can do. God is the one who decides when it's over. That's really, to me, the message is God is the one who decides. We don't decide.
Eric, because I don't have a flag. This is a white piece of paper. I'm waving it. And you don't even know, you don't fully understand. You've done the best job of compelling me to vote of any conversation. And it's not anything you said directly. It's a few things that I'm tying together. You said something 10 minutes into the conversation that I'm connecting to what you're saying now, particularly as it relates to abortion. And I'm leaving this conversation really convicted about needing to vote. I got to get hats off to you. And what it is it relates to January 6th. Those people locked up in jail, political prisoners, the only way they have a chance of getting out is Donald Trump in office. If Kamala Harris gets in office, those people continue to rot inside jails. That's a compelling reason to vote.
Huge. Huge.
Because Sarah McAbee and her husband, she's right here in Tennessee, is locked up. There's a bunch of these people locked up, rotting in jail, and their only ray of hope is Donald Trump. That would be a great benefit to voting.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I've raised, Eric, good job.
Praise the Lord.
This is why dumb conversations are important, and engaging with dummies is important, because you never know what you'll say to a dummy like me that will trigger something in us that will take the scales off our eyes. And so it'll be tough for me not to vote coming to this realization. Thank you, Eric. Great job. We're going to bring on Joel Gilbert and talk about Democratic National Convention from Tuesday night. Michelle Obama, Barack Obama, and that racial religious revival they got going on in Chicago. We'll do it with Joel Gilbert. He's done a documentary on Michelle Obama. We'll do that next. Welcome back to Beef. As I walk you through my top 50 media beefs of all time. Yeah, I'm an equal opportunity beefer. It's like, Randy, are you asleep at the wheel? Big lips are in style. I'd love to squash this beef. I mean, I was not real happy at all. I was less than thrilled. I was displeased. And now we have beef. Welcome back. As promised, we're going to transition after our great conversation with Eric. We want to transition into some things that have gone on at the DNC, Democratic National Convention in Chicago. On Tuesday, they had the big Barack and Michelle Obama parade and the racial idolatry and the black, and oh, we got a black woman and blah, blah. It all went through the roof, and it was like, I'm calling it a religious racial revival or racial religious revival. People were catching the Holy Ghost. People were speaking in tongues because Barack and Michelle Obama, oh, they were just so off the charts. They were awesome. They're the greatest political speakers of all time. Magic Johnson called them the greatest. Everybody's called them the greatest. It's everywhere over social media. And so I wanted to talk to Joel Gilbert again. You guys remember Joel Gilbert, the documentarian, made the great documentary about Trayvon Martin that we've talked about on this show. And he made a great documentary about Michelle Obama. He argued that Michelle Obama was going to be the presidential candidate for the Democratic Party in 2024. Off on that, but I wanted to know what Joel thought about the whole DNC and about the worship of the Obamas on Tuesday night. So, Joel, welcome back to the show. What did you think of Michelle's speech?
Well, there was a lot going on. I think she got the biggest cheer of anybody. And I think Democrats, while she was speaking, were certainly kicking themselves that they didn't nominate Michelle. Instead, they got stuck with Kamala. I think the way that happened is it's pretty clear and well established that Barack Obama was instrumental in getting Biden to step aside. But it does appear that out of bitterness, Joe Biden, to prevent an open convention and prevent Michelle from becoming the nominee, within 1 hour of him saying he was withdrawing, he tweeted that he was supporting Kamala Harris. The Clintons also jumped in. So I think there was kind of a mafia turf war that took place, and the Obamas spent about a week insisting on an open convention. Even they got Black Lives Matter to issue a statement, we want an open convention. I do think that was the plan because Michelle was polling way ahead of Trump and everyone else for a hometown Chicago, coronation. So I think we got to this point with the Obamas because of Biden outmaneuvering the Obamas. And it was a big win for Joe Biden. He got the Obamas to praise him and endorse him. Funnily enough, you saw Michelle, she has never said one word about Kamala. Never in 4 years. She never tweeted about her. When she was the keynote speaker for Joe Biden, she did not mention Kamala Harris. And she went right into her racial politics. And that's the same way that the Obamas ruined race relations in this country by embracing Black Lives Matter, by embracing the Trayvon Martin case to manipulate minority and black voters and to inflame them into thinking, well, you have to vote for us. And she did the same thing last night, implying in several ways that if Trump doesn't agree with Kamala Harris, it's because of race. So it was a disgusting display of the Obamas dividing the country on race for what really is due to their own insecurity. I've chronicled that in my film, how Michelle Obama was not part of the black community growing up. The black kids would beat her up. They called her a white girl. They called her an Oreo. She only went to schools far away with only white kids. Her and her brother refused to study with other black kids. And Michelle even says she was afraid to go out of her house because the black girls would beat her up. So there was a whole lot going on, but certainly Michelle demonstrated that she is the most powerful speaker and the most popular Democrat in the country. And I think the Obamas were outmaneuvered, and that's why Kamala is the nominee.
If I'm memory's right, I don't think Michelle mentioned Joe Biden in her speech. Barack did make a vague mention of Joe Biden. And so that kind of lends some credibility to, maybe Michelle's upset that Joe Biden outmaneuvered her, even though she says, she has no interest in entering politics. But Joe, what I reject is the entire argument that she gave some sort of great speech. And I want people to remember, the people that, think I'm one side. I trashed Donald Trump's speech at the RNC, and people were reluctant to do that. I didn't think it was any good. I don't think the Obamas did anything special Tuesday night. The best speech I heard at the DNC, and again, I didn't agree with it, but I think it's the best speech, is Raphael Warnock. He's the best speaker the Democrats actually have. He's better than both the Obamas. But I wasn't impressed by what they had to say. Maybe I'm just being too hard on them.
Well, I think the Obamas are very effective. No one can sling it like Barack Obama. He loves to diminish and demean Republicans and then call for unity. He loves to trash Republicans and trash Trump and then say how, things are going to be normal if you just vote for him. So he's a very skilled orator. Michelle is very skilled, but it's all manipulation. It's all nonsense that applies to emotions. Michelle talked about how her parents were suspicious if they saw one of their neighbors taking more than they need. That's what she said. So she's saying that if one of her neighbors earned more money than they needed, that her parents were suspicious of them. This is straight out of Karl Marx theory. Take what you do what you can and take what you need according to his need. So it's just pretty much rhetoric. Both of them are full of rhetoric, but they are so very popular that, look, it worked. They got elected, they got reelected. They sell millions of books with the same rhetoric and taking these same positions. So as much as their stories like Michelle Obama with her stories about racism and her parents being suspicious of people who made money, as much as these things are so silly, I have to say that they are very effective. And they're certainly more effective speakers than Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I think they're both total duds. They're both without any personal appeal. They're both without any policies that anybody cares about. And clearly the Obamas are still the stars of the party. And I think, as I said, I think the DNC was kicking themselves last night, like, damn it, why didn't we have an open convention? We could have had Michelle Obama.
And again, I know I'm way outside the norm here, but Joe, I just think if we painted the Obamas white and they said all the same things, people would be like, yeah. But because they're black, particularly Michelle, and because Barack is half black and he's married to an all black woman, and because of all this promotion of like, they're like the Royals over in England or whatever. They're the new Camelot. They're the new Kennedys. And so it's all branding. But it's like JFK, I can go listen to his inauguration speech in 1960. That's a great speech. When I listen to Barack, and if you just listen to what he's saying, I just don't hear this great orator. He's certainly not MLK, and I'm gonna say it again. He ain't even Raphael Warnock. But so I just think this worship of blackness and people, white people trying, look, I'm not prejudiced. I love black people. The Obamas are X, Y, and Z. And then you have black people that are like, yeah, all black people, if it wasn't for racism, we'd be just like Barack and Michelle. And so it's just a gimmick to me.
Yeah, look, the truth, if you look at my films, Barack grew up in a white family in Hawaii. He never knew any black people growing up. He had no common experience with black people. He wanted to marry a black woman. He told his Asian American girlfriend he had to break up because he needed a black woman for politics. Michelle Obama, also not part of the black community. They would beat her up. She had no black friends. She refused to go to high school with black kids. And they called her an Oreo. It means you're black on the outside, but you're really a white girl on the inside. They told her she acted white. So Michelle marries a biracial man, goes to Princeton and goes to, work for the mayor, moves to Hyde Park. She wanted nothing to do with black people. So the Obamas display these racist stories only because they're so insecure in their blackness. Neither of them really has any experiences with the black community. They don't really know any black people. Black people never liked them growing up. Michelle exploited the black community in her career. She kicked 20,000 black people out of their homes when she worked for the mayor of Chicago at Cabrini Green. And she denied access to health care to blacks from the South Side when she worked for the University of Chicago Medical Center. So Michelle always took the jobs in Chicago when the white liberals had problems with black people. She would take those jobs and do the dirty work to exploit the black community. So the Obamas are no friends of the black community, but because they're so insecure about their relationship with the black community, that's why they embrace racism, which they think is the ticket to being accepted. I'm just one of these ordinary black folks. I'm just like you. If they didn't have this insecurity, they wouldn't, bring up and make up these stories because they would be secure. So that's what the whole racial thing is about for Barack and Michelle. It's trying to prove to the black community somehow that they're black and you're one of you. So give me your vote so I can have the power. But the Obamas never did anything for the black community. Everything got worse. Race relations got worse. The economy got worse. But they're still spewing the same nonsense from 2012 that you heard. And that, as you say, there's really no substance. If it was a white guy or a white woman saying the same thing, no one would really pay attention.
I want to push you on the word insecurity.
Okay.
Why wouldn't they just be opportunists? Because that's what I think they are. That they're doing, like, it's not you think the ticket to blackness is victimhood. It is the ticket to a black following, is playing the victim, and they're just being opportunists. This is what it takes to rally, galvanize black support. You have to play the victim. You have to paint yourself as someone as a victim of racism in order to have credibility with black people.
Well, it is pretty much a racist view that Michelle has of the black community. She would, dress in just simple clothes like she thought a black person might dress when she was campaigning for Barack. She puts on a phony urban accent when speaking to black audiences. And she makes up stories that she was held back in life and discriminated against to try to fool minority and black voters into thinking that she's one of them. So I think it's both. I mean, she's so insecure, she doesn't really know what black people experienced. So that's the opportunity, I'll agree with you, that they're seeking. They think that the ticket to getting black and minority support is to inflame them over the issue of race, call Trump a racist and opposing them because of reasons of race. And they think that'll work. I have to say, I think in 2012, when they embraced the Trayvon Martin case, I made the film about that, how they sent down Eric Holder and Al Sharpton and embraced Black Lives Matter, because it wasn't sure that the black community would vote for Obama again because everything had gotten worse. And I think they felt that worked. They could appeal to race and that black voters would fall in line. It appears to be a formula that worked. I mean, what do you think? Is that something that's going to continue to work for Democrats?
Yes. I guess I'm being somewhat sympathetic to the Obamas.
Yeah.
They're doing what works.
Yeah.
And literally the people that need to be most strongly questioned It's us. Why does this work with us? I want to, those women that were having convulsions Tuesday night, I want to, what are you doing? You had 8 years of the Obama presidency, and you know what you got for it? Same-sex marriage and Trans-Visibility Day of Inclusion or Transgender Visibility Day of Inclusion. It's like, what do you, oh God, and if we just get a black woman in office, we're gonna get more gay stuff. I guess that's what they're celebrating. And I'm not trying to be super homophobic, but what did they get from the Obama presidency that they would convulse when they see them 8 years later? I don't understand it. So I don't blame the Obamas. Feed them what makes them happy. I'm a victim. I experienced racism. Yeah. I didn't have the grades to get into Princeton, but they let me in because they're racist. I mean, it's just, feed them that, and people, we just gobble it up.
Look, I think the polls are showing that black males especially are getting it now. The Biden program was to appoint black people to every conceivable job that they could appoint someone to, like UN ambassador, Supreme Court justice, head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, minority leader in the House. And their argument to the black community was, you see, we have similar skin tones to you, therefore we have your interests at heart. Now, that has never been the case. For 50, 60 years, the Democrats have controlled all these urban areas, and everything got worse. Crime, drugs, terrible education system. But it kind of appears to me, at least with black males, and a lot of black women, have kind of turned the corner, and they're seeing through this very racist and superficial attitude of the Democrat Party that if we just have people for you to vote for that we appoint with a similar skin tone, that we're going to look out for you. I just think that argument has, it's still out there, but it's losing ground.
Joel, thank you for making the time. I just on final thought, it is over. There's no chance now after this DNC. There's no way in heck that Kamala's not the candidate on November 5th, right? You do agree with me. Is it over?
I'll agree with that. I think the Obamas get outmaneuvered by the Clintons and the Bidens. And I do think, though, the only reason Michelle appeared at the DNC last night is because she realizes that her next chance will be in 2028, and she had to show up. So Michelle's not done. The Obamas aren't done. They're political animals. And I think they're planning on either controlling Kamala or starting the next campaign if Trump gets in.
Thank you, Joel. Great job as always. Appreciate it. Good to see you. Shemeka Michelle. Next.
And Jason, you didn't mention, they're no longer taking midnight red eyes on Spirit or Frontier Airlines.
3 weeks ago, I took a Spirit Airlines flight. I know, I don't want to brag up top, but you're like, John.
You know how Notre Dame has that one sign that everyone touches? Play like a champion today. Or Michigan said, those who stay will be champions. This is what I think they should do to pay proper homage to the CNC shot factory. Every private jet that they fly on, they should put up like a big portrait or a mural of Caitlin Clark. And every time they get seated, just touch her face like, thanks. See, that would be respectful. That would be something that would show the proper appreciation for the impact that she has had on the WNBA.
All right, welcome back. Time for some Shemeka Michelle. I want to continue the conversation about the DNC and the religious racial revival going on in Chicago. Continue the conversation we just left off with Joel Gilbert. The Obamas spoke last night, Shemeka, and I don't know if you saw it, but a lot of people caught the Holy Ghost, started speaking in tongues. Black women were raising their arms and dancing. Oh, it was just awesome. I'm sure you caught that same fever in North Carolina. Let's play a clip of Michelle Obama talking about black jobs and look at the reaction in the crowd.
I want to know who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs.
Yes. I don't get it. I do get it. I get it. We've turned blackness into a religion, and Michelle's the high priestess, and I don't know what you would call Barack. Anyway, he's the pope of the black religion, and people certainly seem to catch the Holy Ghost. Did you, Shemeka?
Jason, the people in the crowd reminded me of the episode of Martin. Remember when Pastor Leroy Lonnie Love was preaching and Mama Payne caught the Holy Ghost and she was, and she ended up biting off the pew, biting the pews. That's what they look like to me, just foolish. I saw a woman who even had tears streaming down her face. For what? Like, why is this man and this woman that you have probably never met causing you to cry? That's just silly to me. Now, a man can make you cry, but not one that I don't know. And so I was so embarrassed, Jason, because I talked to someone who said, I didn't watch Michelle's speech, but I thought Obama's speech was very unifying. And I said, well, I've only seen the clips. And from the clips, all I hear is communism from both of them. And so I said, well, let me watch the entire thing because I actually didn't watch it last night. I had to go and watch them today. I heard gayism and communism. It was not unifying at all. I was appalled by Michelle saying that this side demonizes children from loving who they want to love and being who they are. And this is one of the things that we stand against. Why are we pushing sexuality on children? I just could not believe the things that I was hearing and the things that apparently went over so many people's heads. I thought it was funny when Obama said, Joe and I are from different backgrounds. But I was thinking, I thought Joe was raised as corn pop, who grew up in black churches. It was just all over the place. And I really feel like if people go and listen to it and compare it to communism, that's exactly what they will hear.
Actually, Joe and Barack come from very similar black backgrounds. They were both raised by older white people. Again, I don't know what Obama's talking about. Seriously, and I'm not even trying to be funny. This whole, we're different. Like, Barack, yeah, I was born in Compton and, Joe was born in Beverly Hills. Cut it out. The dude grew up in Hawaii, raised by his white grandparents, had no real, I think he actually did have a relationship with his real father, not the one that he talks about. But I just not unifying at all, in my view, because you can't be unifying when most of your speech, your applause lines are all the demonization of the other candidate. The other candidate is a racist. The other candidate is a threat to democracy. How is this unifying? It's just people hearing what they want to hear. And mostly what they want to hear is a celebration of black people. We love to be lied to and patted on the head by white people, and rather than I watched a lot of it last night. And it wasn't just Barack and Michelle. The delegates, as they were sending in their votes, a lot of them leaned into race, and we're gonna have a black woman president, black, everything. And then they had this transgender person. I don't even know if transgender, some man dressed up like a woman giving I want to play that clip. The man dressed up like a woman speaking for New Jersey. Play that clip.
My name is Dr. Joey Perella, pronouns she, her, hers. I'm a proud resident of the Garden State. I'm proud to stand with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz because they stand with the LGBTQ community. It's time to turn the page on Trump first. Thank you.
Gayism.
It's a rap concert. I think Little John came out and represented Georgia. It's a rap concert. It's this whole, and this is what I'm frustrates me a little bit about Republicans. This whole big tent, come one, come all. We're just welcoming any and everybody. If you're a drag queen, if you're a drag king, if you're whatever your identity is, we want to make sure you're all represented here. And we've convinced black people that this is good. This is what it's all about. It's all a he gets us commercial. And so whether you're a man that thinks you're a woman, you got to remember, Barack Obama gets us. Michelle Obama gets us because they are Jesus Christ. They're the Holy Spirit. They're Lord and Savior. It's a religion. That's all I kept thinking last night. Is like, look, this is a religion. I want to, Magic Johnson's tweet. Magic Johnson, NBA player, great athlete. I'm not sure if he ever studied anything in high school, college, junior high, or whatever after reading this tweet. Barack and First Lady Michelle Obama gave the best political speeches he left out in the history of our country. The powerful couple talked about working class families, family values, and moving the country forward together. They were powerful, intelligent, compassionate, and sealed with integrity. One of the greatest political speeches ever? I'm just like, Magic, did you graduate from third grade? One of the greatest political speeches ever? And everybody over to, this is so incredible. And Michelle, she should be president. We got to get her into politics. She's one of the greatest political speakers. And Barack, here was my response to Magic Johnson's tweet. Magic's one of my favorite athletes of all time, but he is not a deep thinker. And this went over a lot of people's head. But I said back to Magic, 40 and several decades ago, we used to be a serious country. I have a dream that one day this country will return to sanity. We should ask not what a basketball player can do for politics, but ask what politics can do for basketball. Mr. Johnson, tear down this tweet. Went over a lot of people's head. I'm referencing 4 of the greatest political speeches ever given. For someone to watch those speeches from Barack and Michelle and think these are some of the greatest speeches ever given, when the big takeaway line is, black jobs, he gonna find out what a black job is. That's gonna go 100 years from now, we're gonna be talking about that there's something powerful said there. I don't get it.
Yeah, Michelle said that Kamala was the most qualified presidential candidate ever. And I thought to myself, wow, just the things that they are getting people to buy into, like the idea of not asking for policies. They just keep telling people, let's just get her in. And I think that so many people lack self-esteem and self-worth that they actually feel like putting someone in that's Black will make them less of a loser. So they're actually buying into the whole idea that I don't have to ask anything. I don't have to require anything now. Let's just wait and get her into office. And I found it funny that Barack was pushing big government right before our eyes when he was saying they have you believing that you can't trust the government or that the government can't help you. So they're saying more government, big government. And it infuriated me because I'm thinking we're not talking that you can't trust the government of the Jim Crow government or the slavery government. It was just a couple years ago when the government said you couldn't open your businesses, when the government said unless you are vaccinated, you didn't deserve to be on public transportation or eating in certain restaurants. So no, we don't want to give the government the rights to every single aspect of our lives. So no, in many aspects, we cannot trust the government. But here they were pushing big government down our throats, and I don't think people heard it.
The other thing, I'm going to defend some people, black people, other of these leftists that think if we could just get Kamala in and break this glass ceiling, we could just break this glass ceiling. And what they're really arguing, and they don't fully recognize it, but what they're really arguing, and maybe there's some truth to it, but they've bought into the belief it doesn't matter who the president is, because there's actually a different group of people who are making all of the decisions. And I don't blame people to some degree for thinking that. Joe Biden is the president of the United States. He's not doing anything, and he won't be doing anything for the next 3 or 4 months. And everybody knows it. He hasn't been doing anything for 3.5 years. He stands up and reads a teleprompter. And so there are people that I think legitimately think like, man, all you do is read a teleprompter and do what you're told by the FBI, CIA, the central bankers, and whoever else is controlling the company. And the president really doesn't matter. So why not, as a symbolic gesture, let a black woman have a turn at the wheel? Couldn't do any more harm than anybody else. We just went through Joe Biden. We, in their minds, you just had racist bigot Donald Trump. He was president. Why not let a black woman have the wheel? It can't hurt. She's not making any decisions anyway. I actually think that the tolerance of Joe Biden and allowing this to go on, it's like a demoralization of the American people because they're putting it right in our face. Hey, president don't make no decisions. It don't even matter who the president is. Joe Biden goes to bed every night at 6 o'clock. He wakes up around 9 o'clock and maybe has a meeting, a worthless meeting, but he's not making any decisions. And so people are legitimately sitting there. Why not let the black girl have a turn? She's an AKA ski wee. She can host parties with Sexy Red.
Yeah, I can ride 10 minutes from my home and have the answer to why the black woman should not be in charge. But I will also say that's why, as a country, because of Biden, we're at the edge of World War III. So I think if Kamala gets in place, we're going to be right at World War III. And I don't think people are paying attention to exactly what's happening in the world around the globe when it comes to us and the military and what's really happening. Because we get up, every morning and life seems the same except for the high prices. We don't really have an understanding that we are at the edge of World War III. And I think they're just waiting for the right time to strike. It's not a question of if, but when.
Well, I want to end it and go circle back to my point about racial idolatry. This is the danger of it, because there are black people that legitimately believe in their heart of hearts, because they're so immersed in racial idolatry, that, man, if we just have a black woman as president, more black girls are going to have their eyes open and they're going to go to school better and they're going to make better grades and they're going to find a husband and quit having babies out of wedlock. And all, if we just have a black president, because you got to have these symbols. And so that's what they legitimately think. That's what they think, how life works. And the argument that I'm trying to have with them is like, no, there's a set of values that we all need to adopt to the best of our abilities. That will fix things. And those values are found in the Bible. And adhering to those values as best you can will lead to the progress you're looking for, not some symbol. And so we evaluate everything through a racial lens, nothing through a values policy lens. And that's how we continue to get hoodwinked. And I'm looking at a group of people that fell for this with Barack Obama, looked up 8 years later and said, dang, nothing happened. Pookie and them is still shooting up folks in our neighborhood. Our kids' academic rates haven't improved. Nothing happened. And we had this symbol for 8. Well, if we get 4 more or 8 more years of it, you got to remember. No, we have to adopt and stick to and adhere to some values that have thousands of years of proven results. Thousands of years of proven results. But I don't know, it was sad. I can't wait to see what Kamala does tonight and she puts a bow on the end of this, but I'll be talking about that with Tucker Carlson. Anyway, go ahead, Shemeka.
I think the only thing I agreed with Obama on was when he said, usually the sequel is worse, because the Obama sequel was definitely worse. That was when we got men in the women's restrooms. So you're right. People just, praised Obama, but he actually did nothing for Black people. There was no reason that we should bow down and worship him then or now. And if we follow Kamala's footsteps, then what we'll do as Black women is we'll use Black men to get ahead, and then we'll marry a Jewish man and not have any Black kids because we don't want to be invested into Blackness or into this country. So, we can follow her footsteps, but if that's what you want, put her in there. But as for me and my house, I am actually concerned about the country, and I will not fall for the symbolism. I don't care. She could have been born and raised as my neighbor. I would not care. Her policies don't line up with my values. They actually have a mobile truck on site giving abortions. They are promoting abortions right in the open. I remember when this was a secret thing. This was something that you didn't brag on. This wasn't something that you wore on your sleeve like it was something to be proud of. And now they are actually advertising people being able to get abortions while they're at the conference. That's crazy to me. But this is where we are, and this is what we want to continue to push in the country and push on the next generation.
Unfortunately, Shemeka, this will sound like I'm joking, but there is a possibility. And you're old enough to remember this, but they're going to turn this abortion truck thing into the ice cream truck. And they're going to start driving them abortion trucks through Black neighborhoods and ring a little bell. And people are going to have their little daughters running out there. The abortion truck is here. The abortion truck is here. Daddy, can I get an abortion? And they're going to drive them around our neighborhood. And we're going to run out there. Go ahead and get your abortion, baby girl. Go ahead. That's
and
how
just
common this is.
Yeah, just our neighborhoods, because I saw the tweet and I had to go and look it up. The guy put out a tweet, and I think you retweeted it, that in 1980, blacks were 12% of the population in comparison to Hispanics that were about 6%. And now Hispanics are 19%, and we are still hovering around the same numbers because they are having their kids. We are killing more black babies than are born every year, but yet we are still screaming, my body, my choice, running behind foolishness and not even realizing we are being replaced and we are cheering it on.
Sad. Thank you, Shemeka. Great job as always. We'll see you next week. I need you guys to remember, Fearless, we're going live starting September 9th, 10 a.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Central Time, starting September 9th. That's only on YouTube and Blaze TV. We'll play some tomorrow, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom. Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came in like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on the corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, no deceiving. We all wanna be free. We want freedom.